The Wawa Diaries, The Making of a Film, written and read by Richard E. Grant. Development. 14th of October 1999. The Ivy Restaurant, London. The producer Hilary Heath has invited me for lunch to discuss possible projects. Having assumed she is aware of the idea for a screenplay I've been blathering about writing for some years, I believe this to be the meeting at which I am required to deliver my pitch. Not at all. Hilary thinks I might have a novel I'm interested in adapting or some such. Tall, beautiful, impulsive, and unfazed, she accommodates my tangential idea and clucks welcome noises of enthusiasm when I suggest spooling forth a synopsis between mouthfuls of Caesar salad. It goes something like this. Coming of age at the end of an age story set in Africa during the last gasp of empire, circa 1969, about a man in his mid-40s, facing the premature end of his colonial career due to imminent independence, and cuckolded by his wife, left to bring up their 11-year-old son. Meanwhile, the expat community stake their claim in the coming independence celebrations by mounting an amateur production of Camelot to entertain the visiting British royal coming out to officiate at the handover. A comic drama, purely autobiographical and as true as fiction. Sounds wonderful. Have you got a script? Well, yes, but not quite. It's in 1,000 pieces, notes on napkins, on scraps of paper and drawers and plastic bags, old theatre programmes, but I do have a structure and a list of scenes. How long will you need to write up a first draft? Hilary has an uncompromisingly direct approach, accompanied by a sort of nervy, skittish quality that can sound either accusatory or blunt, or both. I suppose I'd been waiting for someone to demand a draft for years, but when finally asked the direct question, I'm not really prepared for it. Somehow I convinced myself it would never happen. Couple of months eases its way past my lips, which clearly knows something the rest of me doesn't. How about aiming for just this side of Christmas, so I can read it on holiday in Barbados? Sounds good to me, I say, which should have quavered forth, but no, the words come out sounding quite assured and emphatic, as I chew heartily, trying to hide the fact from all my panic stations that Red Alert might be a mere pudding away. Before I know it, Hilary is my appointed producer, and I leave lunch as her appointed writer-director. I allowed myself a momentary hauteur, hop, skip and scramble down the escalators into Leicester Square station, and sat all the way home looking at my fellow travellers, wondering whether they too were full of secret plans and subsidised lunch. "But you haven't even written it up properly yet," said my wife, only just managing to suppress a hearty snort. "I know, but I'm going to." In my study I groaned and rummaged my way through every box, bag and briefcase to collect all the peripatetic pieces together. A vast pile emerged that looked ominously like a tax return in the middle of a nervous breakdown. Where to begin? Having only made a list of scenes and written a brief outline, I began to wonder if I ought to phone Hilary, reimburse her for lunch, and call it quits now. Rifling around, though, I realised that a huge amount of it was already written, albeit in short, unconnected scenes. I bunged on a CD of 70s music and set about numbering the chaotic postcards, notes, and everything else. The thought that someone really ought to write a book about this place had refrained throughout my childhood. I remember a sense from everyone who lived through this last gasp of empire that it was worthy of being recorded in some way. The cast list was composed of expats who had left England young or scarpered out of India in 1947, dribbled down through colonial Africa from Kenya via Nyasaland, northern Rhodesia, Bechuanaland and Basutoland, and finally fetched up in Swaziland, the last outpost of the Union Jack on the continent. There was a braying chorus of "We're going home" on one hand, and "England's gone to the dogs" on the other. Most faced the dilemma of either trying to hold on to a colonial standard of living and sense of self-importance that had a fast approaching sell-by date, or sailing back to a life of anonymity in a semi in Datchet or Norwich or wherever. The circumstances of my parents' pain-filled divorce were so riddled with rumour, recrimination and misunderstandings that in writing about it I hoped somehow to make sense of it all and expose the hypocrisy of the colonial hoi polloi sitting in judgment. Secrets are like poison, and I wanted to burst the pustule. At the same time, I wanted to revisit and recreate the sheer malarkey and joy of being an adolescent amongst adults revving up for an amateur production of Camelot. Hilary calls. "Can you come in and pitch to the finance team at Blackjack Productions in Soho Square tomorrow?" The next day I put on my
Sample complete. Ready to continue?